Welcome to A More Brilliant Life. We share inspiring stories from people who hit rock bottom, face their challenges, and transform their lives. Learn how you can rise above expectations, discover who you are, and reclaim your future. All right. Welcome, Jay Schmidt, to A More Brilliant Life podcast. This is the podcast where we talk through people's life transitions, major pivots in life, major career changes, and just major life transformations. And the goal of doing that is just to show people that life happens, that you can actually change. You are not stuck in a single career for the rest of your life. You're not stuck in a single location for the rest of the life. You actually have the option to move to a new country, to change your job. So often people get this idea stuck in their head that they have too much sunk cost in their current career, in their current life, or whatever it may be. But so that's the goal here, is just to highlight stories of people who have done major pivots in their life, have really decided to make that leap and move to a different country or change their careers or whatever it was. And today we're hearing Jay Schmidt's story. Jay, you actually moved to the UK, I know, a couple of years ago, but we'll just start and let you tell the story. So yeah, go ahead. You want to get going?
Well, it's kind of funny. I worked in the dairy industry for 30 years, growing up on a dairy farm in central Minnesota, and with a degree in animal science from University of Minnesota, and a very proud graduate of Minnesota. 30 years into that, my then 20-year-old daughter looks at me and she says, "Dad, you should look at this tourism thing. It's kind of fun." So I took a 2-week tourism certification course in May of 2017, and she was right. It was very fun, and went through a lot of different changes throughout that time and found out how fun it really was.
Where was the tourism course? Where was that?
The class I took is called International Tour Management Institute, or ITMI.
Okay.
It's based in Sausalito, California, San Francisco. I took the 2-week course in Boston. They bounce it around the country to different tourism type cities. My daughter took the class before I did in Washington, D.C. So the whole first week of the course is learning how to give a city tour, whether you're on a bus, whether you're walking, or whatever, how you research to find the stories. And I always say, don't let the facts get in the way of a dang good story.
Right.
Now, I say that tongue in cheek. You can't make up stuff, but you find the little hidden stories about the city or whatever you're looking at.
To make
people
it interesting.
Don't care that this building was built in 1839 by Jake Reiki. They want to know his wife hated the design until she received the paycheck. You find little story, and I'm learning that all here in London now. The same deal. So
how long ago was it that you actually took the tourism course?
Beginning of May of 2017.
2017. So we're looking at about 8 years ago.
8 years ago, yeah.
And what do you think were the ingredients happening in your life that made you want to do that? You were in the dairy industry, or what was it that made you even consider that as being a good idea?
Well, I was in a very unhappy marriage at the time.
Okay.
And my daughter saw that.
Okay.
She saw that you need to get out of the house. And every time I say tourism changed my life, my daughter looks at me and goes, "You're welcome." and it's kind of a little joke between her and I now. And once I took the course, I ended up getting divorced, and I dabbled in tourism for about 2 years. I did a little bit of work in Washington, D.C. with 8th grade tours, 14-year-olds, Washington, D.C. And I kind of just dabbled and kept my day job in the dairy industry. And then I got offered a Route 66 tour September of 2019. I was going through the Marl course with you. You remember that at that time. And the job I had was giving me time off to go to the Marl class, Minnesota Ag and Rural Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, let's just kind of, pun intended, milk this until April of 2020 to get through Marl and then decide what I'm going to do with tourism or stay in dairy. And I got offered that Route 66 tour in September, so I took 2 weeks vacation from my day job to do that. All of a sudden, about May, I get offered an agriculture tour at the end of June. And I'm going, oh man, what do I do? I don't want to burn the bridge with the Route 66 that I had already accepted, but I want that ag tour. It was New Zealand farmers through the upper Midwest. And was with an ag-only tourism company, and I'm sitting here going, oh man, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? My best friend from university, my daughter, and one other university, a friend of mine, they all said, I think your plan to quit in April just got moved up to the previous June. So I quit my job at Leadstone on June 1st. I went to the Marl course up in Duluth, came home from that, and then I started in on that tour with the New Zealand group. And my backup plan until I started making enough money in tourism was to drive big truck. So I started driving semi on July 1, which I did the Route 66 tour in September. And I did one other tour yet in 2018. And then COVID hit in 2020, or that was 2019, sorry. 2019. Sure. Then COVID hit, and I had a full-time job in trucking that took me through COVID.
Sure.
So it worked out great.
So leading up to the tourism gig, how long had you been in the dairy industry?
For about 30 years.
Holy cow, 30 years.
I graduated from University of Minnesota in 1989, started my first job on January 2nd of 90. So actually it was 29 years. I say about 30 years. So 29 years within different jobs in dairy. My brother and his family are still on the home farm that we grew up on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So that was a major decision for you then, I assume, just to, and so do you think if you hadn't been, it's a pretty common theme among people to really get into this dark place or some sort of depressive state or just general unhappiness with their lives. And that's what oftentimes it takes for people to make the leap or to make the changes. Do you think you would have got into tourism if you had a happy marriage or just kind of a more of a normal, steady, like boring life? Okay. For anybody who's listening, Jay is shaking his head.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. No, I don't think so. It's all things, my daughter, when she was a junior in high school, went to Germany. And then before she left, I had her following me through university for either animal science or pre-vet. And she came home and she said, nope, I'm going for international business. I'm going to travel for a living. Yeah. And then she found this tourism thing. And it's kind of funny. Her mother pushed us both into it, the tourism. And hate to say this, but it was her mother who pushed both of us into doing it. And my daughter said, Dad, you got to do this as well.
Okay.
And so little did her mother know that it would probably end the marriage.
Okay.
So it's I was in a rough place. I loved my job. I was working for one of my best friends, and I was there for 15 years at that particular company. And I loved it. I loved what I did, but I needed something different. I needed a change. Right. And
do you feel like you kind of hit like a growth ceiling with where you were at in your job or in your life?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So it was, you just kind of had bumped up against this spot where you're like, okay, I need new experiences. I need to grow. I need to learn. Okay. And so how bad would you say that it got before you actually broke through that point?
Well, it was that I would say there was a Christmas that things didn't go very well at home over Christmas, and that's when I started looking at the tourism school. And then I went then to Boston to the class in May of 17. And some of the people that were in my class are still my best friends,
cool.
In this industry. And I did some work in Washington, and I'm going, oh my gosh. I kind of look at it. It's my job to make a tourist is make sure their trip goes without a hitch so they have fun. I got to keep them happy. And when I was in sales and service, I show up on a farm. Yeah, they probably like me and they saw me and they said, but I'm there to either sell them something or fix a problem. So in all, the farmer technically is not happy to see me. You know what I'm saying? And so now I get a group. I'm still friends with people I had on tour in 2019, 2018. I'm Facebook friends with most of the big customers. And it's my job when I take a group, and I do a lot of groups from Great Britain or the UK back to the United States. And that Route 66 I did in September of 19, that was the first time I did 66. I've now done Route 66 8 times.
Wow.
And in my mind, it gets better and better. On that very first Route 66, I met my now wife from the UK.
Wow.
And she always goes, well, we didn't get to see that. We didn't get to see that. And I said, you had a rubbish tour manager. I'd ask for a refund.
So you met your current wife, and is that ultimately what led you to the UK then, I assume, was her? Okay. And so how did the two of you navigate, like, deciding, okay, you're going to pull up stakes and go to the UK versus she's going to pull up stakes and come to the US?
Well, my job was either I'm on the road leading a tour or I'm in a semi truck driving a semi. So I was not going to be home.
Okay.
She has a job where she goes into the office 2 days a week, 2 out of 5 days. She works from home. She had a steady job, and both our fathers were passed away when we met. But her mom is now currently 90 years old. My mom is currently 88 years old. I got a little better support system back in Minnesota than she has here in the UK.
Okay.
So we're here because of her mom. Basically,
Sure. Yeah, no, that all makes sense. So then talk about like the transition to the UK. That was about 2 years ago. You've been in the UK now?
Probably 3.5. We've been married
3.5. Okay.
We'll be married. Well, it was 3 years last November is when we got married, right? We met in September of 19. We were going to get together in Nashville and Memphis in April of 2020. And as you know, you and I got back from Cambodia and the world came to a screeching halt in March. So we had gotten together then because we were talking that, well, from November to April is a long time. And I said, okay, I'll come to Europe. And so our first date was a 3-day weekend in Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, wow.
And that was in January of 20. Then you and I went to Cambodia on that Marl trip. And then the world stopped. I did not see her face to face for a full year.
Wow. So you kept that relationship together long distance via Zoom phone calls and
Yep. It was WhatsApp. When I was trucking, I had the headset on, talking to her on the phone. We would FaceTime as much as we could. 6-hour time difference. So as soon as I would wake up, I'd give her a call, and as soon as she went to bed, we'd get off the phone. So I chatted with her son and his now wife. They got married last weekend. And so I got to meet those two. And before I asked her to marry me, I asked him if it was okay. That was in January. I got engaged January of 21. I was able to go to London. She could not come to Minnesota because of COVID. I went back in August of 21 to finalize all the visa paperwork so the government would let me get married over there, which is kind of funny. We had to go to an interview in 2 separate rooms to make sure it wasn't a sham marriage trying to sneak me in, illegal alien, so to speak. Hot button. And she still could not come to the States. She was on the first flight out of London, out of Heathrow to Minneapolis. Well, she had to go through JFK. first flight back to America on Virgin Airlines to JFK on November the 8th, when Trump said, okay, the UK can come to the States.
Okay.
And she spent a week in Minnesota, got a whirlwind tour, meeting my family, meeting my friends, a George Strait concert at US Bank Stadium. I showed her as much as I could in a week. We flew back together. We got married November 27th. And I had to go through all the paperwork to make sure I could legally get married there. Like I said, a separate interview in 2 separate rooms in August. As soon as the wedding's over, December 1st, I flew back to the States. Then I had to get a spouse visa so I could work in the United Kingdom.
Okay.
That took 12 weeks.
Okay.
I think that was approved mid-March, if I remember right. And then I had commitments in April in Washington, D.C. My visa was approved. I flew over here for the month of May. Started looking for work, started exploring in London. We're about 25 miles north of London. So we went into London and she started showing me London so I could start learning it.
Sure.
I had commitments in June in Washington, D.C. again. We did a redo of our marriage in Minnesota on July 9th. So that anniversary is tomorrow.
Wow.
So, and
well, congratulations.
I got moved over here on July 12th officially of 22. So yeah, 3 years ago. On July 23rd, I had my first job in London as a tour guide.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
And
so yeah, and so how did you get your first job as a tour guide? Just
well, it was I started putting out the feelers. I just went into London. I'd see the hop on hop off buses. I think I found City Wonders online. I applied. I had that was in May. Sometime from when I was here in May to when I got back here in July, I had an interview over the phone with the manager down on the London business. Their City Wonders is based in Dublin, Ireland, and I did a shadow tour of somebody, and I did my first on my own. Like I said, July 23rd, so 11 days after I had got here. And
that was fast. Yeah. That was super fast. Yeah.
So starting Thursday, City Wonders has me in London every day until August 18th now, now that I'm back here. So changing of the guard, Churchill War Rooms, Tower of London, Windsor Castle, Stonehenge Bath, you name it, I can do it.
That's fascinating. So, but I mean, you must have felt like a foreigner giving tour guides in a foreign city. And like, I mean, what did that feel like? Did you get any imposter syndrome or anything like that? Or did you feel like, yeah.
I have an American tour guide friend who was here ahead of me, and she lives, quite a ways north. She warned me. She said, "Oh, these English tour guides, they're not going to help you out." And I found it just the opposite.
Oh, okay.
You know me, Jake. My personality, I can mix with just about anybody. And I've gotten so much help from my tour guide friends in London. There's a couple that are kind of like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
But I wear this hat on every tour. And it's a University of Minnesota hat for those that can't see. And I get yelled at from anywhere. Go Gophers, Skyuma, and row the boat when I'm doing walking tours in London.
So and your clientele is obviously not necessarily English people because they don't tour their own cities. So is it? I suppose it's just people from all over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah.
I get a lot of French, a lot of Dutch. It all kind of depends on what time of the year. The tour I led on Monday Sunday, changing of the guard on Sunday, they were all Americans. Two of them were from Minnesota.
Crazy.
Yep. So they like it. When I shadowed a tour, I think it was when I was shadowing the Churchill War Rooms tour just to learn it. I had a couple from Michigan, And they saw my Minnesota hat right away, so they knew where I was from. And the guy leading the tour was from Wales, and the Welsh have a strong accent, very strong. And he goes, "You're going to have to change your accent," he said at the beginning of the tour. And I looked at him and I said, "I think that's why I got hired."
Yeah.
Halfway through, he said, "Oh my God, I can't understand this guy."
Really?
Yeah. So I do these walking tours in the summer. Middle of November, I get on a open top double deck bus, and I do Christmas lights tour starting mid-November. And the tour, that's a different company. And the head guide, he just calls me the token American. So, and I don't know what it is. I get tipped more than the locals.
I believe it. No,
You know?
it's your energy, Jay. That's certainly what it is. It just is it's your Minnesota nice, like, it's just such an innocent energy. I don't know. That's what I think it is. And
I tend to agree. And we got the bus drivers that get us through, and you work as a team. Even when I lead a over the road tour, Route 66, or Southern Sights and Sounds, Nashville, Memphis, New Orleans, you got a driver with you the whole trip. You're a team. That driver can either make or break my job. I'm ultimately in charge on that bus, but I rely on the driver a lot.
So is tourism now, is that your full-time gig, or do you do anything else on the side?
Yeah.
That's your full-time gig.
This is my full-time gig. It gets pretty lean in January, February. So last winter, I actually picked up a winter job. We live in Luton, England, which again is 25 miles north of London. There's 5 airports that surround London. Heathrow's the big one. Most people heard of Gatwick and Stansted. We got Luton Airport. So last winter, I took a job de-icing planes at the Luton Airport. Wow. That took me back to my farm boy days.
I bet. And you had to have been like long johns, like full gear. No, like, is it pretty comfortable there, or what?
Well, you got a truck and you got a boom basket.
Okay.
You're completely enclosed. It's like a completely enclosed skid loader.
Oh, crazy. Okay, so you're de-icing, I see, from inside, like inside a controlled environment then.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there's times I reach behind me and I open up the window because you get too warm. I don't have gloves on. You got 2 little joysticks. One's for moving the basket and the other one's for spraying with the nozzle. And
that sounds like fun.
It was a fun job.
I bet.
The only downfall, I had to wake up at 1:15 every morning and be out to the airport by 2:30, and be ready to go to work by 3.
Sure.
So,
but I mean, it sounds really satisfying. Is like, do you actually like see ice flying as you're like de-icing, or not necessarily?
Well, if I was in Minnesota, yes.
Yeah.
We are 10 degrees north of Minneapolis. We're on about the 55th parallel here in London or Luton. Minneapolis is roughly the 45th parallel. So we're 10 degrees north of Minneapolis. If you look at the Western Hemisphere, London is just above the southern shore of Hudson. Okay. Now, it very rarely goes below freezing here. The sun never shines in the winter. The daylight hours I get 2 hours less daylight than I do in Minnesota. Conversely, in the summer I get 2 more hours of daylight. The sun is up when I wake up at 5:30 here.
Oh wow.
So, this time of the year, and we go to bed, it's still daylight at 9-10 o'clock. So that was the biggest surprise I had that first May when I came over here, was daylight hours. But in the winter, it's raining. It very rarely snows. When it does snow an inch, the world comes to a screeching halt. I mean, schools are closed. I want to go out and go play in the snow, and my wife said, "You can't drive in this. You can't drive in this." And I'm going, "Yes, I can." And then she's more worried about the other drivers not knowing how to handle it. So that first 4-inch snowfall we had, I had the little 7-year-old neighbor boy who went outside and we made a snow.
Cool.
So They don't scrape their sidewalks. They just leave it melt. Because
Oh,
in
wow.
3 days, it's going to be gone.
Sure. So besides like weather related things, like what other culture shocks did you experience moving to the UK? I mean,
Well, I think it's like you go into any big city coming from a small rural community,
mhm.
you don't get the friendliness that you do where you and I grew up. You know, the Fairfax, the Cosmoses, you know everybody on the street, you're going to say, hey, good morning. Hey, how you doing? You do not get that here.
Really?
Luton is a city. What's
everybody's just kind of heads down, like I'm doing my thing. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. When you get into London, say in the touristy areas, you're going to get that, but the locals, no.
Okay. Well, don't let that affect your tourism, because I swear that's the Minnesota nice that you need to just blast out there and shine through.
And you get out into the smaller communities, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're in a town that's, Luton has been ranked the worst city in the whole UK for a few years. It's
by who?
Just ranking places.
Okay. And by what criteria? Crime?
Oh, it's a lot of crime.
Okay.
We're in a pretty decent neighborhood. We're in what's called Bushmead, and that's pretty good. And we now get trick-or-treaters because I'm not the only American in that community. So Halloween is starting to take effect. People always say, yeah, we live over here, but we always know we got to go to Bushmead if we're going to get decent candy. So we're the neighborhood where the trick-or-treaters come. I started putting up lights and carving pumpkins and Christmas. I'm putting up lights before any of the neighbors are at Christmas time. So that's an American. I bought a barbecue grill, the first thing I bought over here, because I needed to grill out. So I got neighbors looking over the fence. What are you cooking tonight? When they start smelling it. So
what other types of culture shock did you experience?
Sizes of the house.
Okay, smaller, I assume.
My house is 15 feet wide by 26 feet deep, 2-story.
Okay.
So 700 really had to cram in.
Yeah.
It's a row house, so we share walls on both sides, which helps the heat. However, it's, my voice isn't exactly quiet, so it's kind of tough that way.
Okay.
So it's a very narrow, and our back garden, the backyard is a garden. It's 15 feet wide by probably another 20, 30 feet deep. So it's just, there's just no room.
And what is the population of your city?
About 250,000.
250,000, and that would be considered a moderate-sized city.
Well, we're basically a suburb of London. There's farm ground between us and London, and it's a 25-minute train ride to get into London.
Okay.
But the traffic, there's no straight roads in London. That's a culture shock. Where, again, you grew up out near where I grew up. You drive on Highway 7 into the cities. It's straight and it's flat. There is no straight roads here in London, and they're narrow. What they call motorways, we would call an interstate. There's no shoulder, so if somebody breaks down, the road is stopped.
That's very similar to Costa Rica, actually, and that's one of the driving is definitely a culture shock coming from Minnesota, obviously, because in Minnesota you can set your cruise, you can turn on adaptive cruise, and all the new cars have adaptive cruise and whatnot. You go to Costa Rica, not a single car has a cruise control, and none of the rentals do either. And it's largely because you're always adjusting your speed, always, and you just never know when you're going to be stopped.
You have automatic transmissions there.
I do, although manual transmissions are very common down there. And then you've also got the bicycles that every time or not the bicycles. Well, yes, you have bicycles, but you also have motorcyclists. So every time you're taking a right or a left, you always check your mirror to make sure there's not some, motorcycles splitting lanes that you're going to turn right into. And you just always have to be so aware of what you're doing, that it is driving in Costa Rica. It can be kind of exhausting. And to get to get 30 kilometers away as the crow flies, like it can take you 2-3 hours sometimes, just to all the winding and all the stop and go. And
my wife's office is 12 miles from our house. The fastest we've ever made it with good traffic is 55 minutes.
Wow. Yep.
Wow. The longest it's taken us is an hour and a half.
So I suppose the train is really the way to go there.
Well, you can't really get from Luton to here by train.
Okay.
So it is a drive. To get into London, we don't drive into London. And London has a tax that if your car is so old, an emissions tax, that if you go in there with an old car, you get taxed.
I see.
So we'll take the train if we go into London. When we go up to her son's place an hour north of us, we'll drive. But we won't take the motorway because Tracy's got an older car. And I get to see more. If we're on the back roads, I get to see. So, but there's shrubs growing up on either side, so I can't see into the fields to see what's growing.
So how often you get back to the U.S. then?
This summer is very busy. I have, counting a personal trip in August, I have 5 tours plus the personal trip. So I'll get to the States 6 times this summer.
Okay.
I don't get home that often, though. I don't get to Minnesota.
Okay. So you're doing a lot of flying. It sounds like, yeah. And so do you experience any culture shock going back to the U.S.? Like now that you've kind of gotten accustomed to nothing, it just is all, you're all accustomed to it.
No, and I'm finding I worked for a tour company out of London called Titan Travel. And my groups are anywhere from 25 to 45 guests on a motor coach for 2 weeks. I'm finding, and I'm getting rave reviews from these people because I know what they have in England. I go to the States and I show them what they don't have in England. Okay. And then when I get groups that go from the US over to England, it's the same thing, just the opposite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've led a World War II tour here a year ago May now, and they all say, God, we love it, because I'm telling them, okay, here's what you need to do here. This is what you're finding that you won't have in America. Or when we go over there, I go to Walmart and I buy treats that I know candy they will not find in the UK.
Like what? Can you call some out?
Yes. Window Green Lifesavers.
Okay.
They don't get Lifesavers. They go, oh, these are called Polos. As soon as they taste that winter green, oh, that's medicine. Half of them spit it out. And sure. I know that. So I pass that one out, and beef jerky. They don't get beef jerky here. I'm starting to see Jack Link's show up here, but I always will buy a pack of Jack Link's beef jerky. My stepson here, I got to bring him a pack of Jack Link's back every time I go to the States. Ranch dressing is another one. They don't get ranch dressing here either. So there's different candies that I'll pass out. Hershey's chocolate is crap compared to dairy milk that they get here.
Okay. Yeah.
Just, that's Cadbury versus Hershey. So, there's just different little things and I've done Route 66 enough now. I know you get into a city, okay, you got to try this food. This is food to this particular city. You get to, I got that Nashville, Memphis, New Orleans tour. You got to try alligator. You have to try it. I don't care if you like it or not, but you got to try it. You know what I mean?
Yep. I've never tried alligator, and I would love to do that.
Oh, gator! If you go to New Orleans, go down into the French Quarter at Pat O'Brien's. You got to have the gumbo, the jambalaya, and gator bites.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun. So when you look back on your life transition, into tourism, into the UK, do you have any regrets? Do you have anything that you wish you had done differently? Anything that you can think of?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of wishing I'd maybe done it sooner, but I still have my number one passion is educating Joe Schmo public where food comes from, how well farmers take care of their livestock, how well farmers take care of their land, how well farmers are producing such a high quality, safe product. That is still my number one passion.
Mm-hmm.
Number
Yeah.
two is history. And so just learning it's like I was telling you before we started, our friend Rod, who told me, how do you remember this stuff? Well, it's my job, and I remember those silly little stories.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you just learn these along the way. You throw a silly joke along in there with it, and you're sucking them right in, and just make sure these guests don't have a problem along the way. If their luggage gets lost, it's my job to make sure their luggage gets there and keep them calm until we get the luggage cut up. So,
I could totally see where you, this is a perfect niche for you, and how, just because you have so many endearing qualities, and, the Minnesota nice just shines, completely out of your personality. So, what advice would you have for somebody that is like kind of on the precipice, like considering a major life change? I mean, anything that you can say to help them get over the edge or get over the hump or anything like that?
I had a 2-year buffering period before I went full.
Because of COVID, or?
Well, no, I dabbled for 2 years before COVID. I took the course in 2017. I pulled the pin on my day job in 2019. So I had a full 2 years of checking it out and trying to see where it was going to go.
Yeah, so you kind of have to have the grit and the persistence and the vision before, and there's definitely a buffer period where you need to kind of think things through and figure out kind of how to make the transition. Or
that, and when I did finally pull the pin and leave the dairy industry, I did have the backup plan. This job allows it because you do a big tour, you're gone for 2 weeks. And I had a trucking company that was willing to let me sign on part-time. And they're big enough, they need drivers. I could go back and hop in a truck anytime I wanted to with them. And
so you always had kind of this fail-safe in the back of your mind, and if all else fails, that's always there.
If all else fails, I go drive truck.
Sure.
I'm on the road anyway. So that particular company, I'd driven between a couple jobs about 15, 20 years ago, and that was just a short-lived 6-8 month deal. And then I got a job back in the dairy. And then when I threw this idea out at the general manager of this company, I said, I got this idea of trying tourism, working with you guys when I'm not on tour until I really get rolling with the tourism. And he goes, that's a great idea. Come on aboard. Cool. Call my cousin, will be your dispatcher, and she'll take care of you. And as a matter of fact, a year ago, February, my mother came over to visit, and I flew back with her. I had a tour in California 2 weeks after that. And I said, I told you earlier that tourism is pretty dead in January, February. So I called them up and said, do you mind if I come and drive for 2 weeks? They said, absolutely. I made some quick cash for 2 weeks driving truck when tourism was virtually dead.
Sure.
And this year, I got a little better handle on the busy season. So I'm hoping I don't have to go do that again. That was 2 years ago already, because I did this last winter, I did the airport. The year before, I went and drove truck for 2 weeks.
Cool. And so what was the most difficult thing about the transition? Or was it, or even like, what was the most difficult thing about making the leap? Or, you know what I mean? What kind of hurdles did you run into? Challenges?
Well, waiting for the paperwork to come through and making sure I had all the documentation, the I's crossed, the T's, T's crossed, the I's dotted, and everything. I have nothing to hide, so I wasn't worried about that part of it. It's just making sure I had it all.
How
there.
long was that process from start to finish? Because now are you a full-on citizen of the UK now? No. Okay, you just have residency.
I have I got my green card, if you will. It's all attached to my passport. If you would come to the UK as a U.S. citizen, you'd need an ETA, and I'm not even sure what they call that. I get asked every time, "Do you have an ETA?" And I said, "Yes, I do," which is basically like a driver's license. Mm-hmm. It's my bio card that says I'm legal to work here in England and receive a paycheck.
Okay. So how long did it take for you to get that green card?
12 weeks.
12 weeks altogether. That's not bad, actually.
Oh,
3 months?
No. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was, well, actually 16 weeks. They said 12 weeks, but it took 16.
Sure.
I got married November 27th. I flew back. I had an interview. I had the paperwork already started. All I had to do was submit it and get an interview. I had to go for an interview in Chicago on December 1st.
Okay.
So, and then from that interview, it was 16 weeks.
Okay.
Almost takes longer to put all the crap together, make sure you got all the documentation. And I had a stack of documentation probably 6 inches thick, and to prove that who I was, that I was married and all that, marriage certificates and all that, we had to make sure we proved it was legit.
Did you have to get an apostille? Do you know what an apostille is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's one of the things that Costa Rica requires, because we're applying for residency there. Okay, and it's the same story. We just getting all the documents together takes so much time. We had to do an FBI background check, criminal history check, and then that expires 6 months after. So there's a bunch of different documents that expire. FBI expires after 6 months. We need a municipality certificate to make sure all our taxes are paid up in Costa Rica. That only has a 1 month window. And so just trying to get all these things in line at the same time. And we had to get the birth certificates. We had to get the marriage certificate, all apostilled, which is sent through the State Department. There's the marriage certificate had to go through the Minnesota something or other. And then the FBI documents had to go through the federal side, and then all they basically do is just put a stamp on it that says, "Yep, these documents are legit." That's all, and just say, so that was a huge learning curve for us. Did you have somebody helping you through the process?
No. Nope.
Okay, you did. You figured it all out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
And we are actually. First round of documentation for Tracy to move back to the States is already been filed.
Okay.
That was right before New Year's, right between Christmas and New Year's. We sent that in, and the process is a lot slower in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to get it set up so we can go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So the ultimate plan is, according to my wife, is buy a camper van in America, and then she gets to see America, and we live wherever we park it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds incredible. And so how long is the tourist visa? If as an American going into the UK, how long do you get just as a tourist visa?
2 years and 9 months is my work visa.
Your work visa, but what about me? What if I just went to the UK as an American citizen?
I think it's 6 months. 6 months.
They give you 6 months, so they give you 180 days. That's actually the same as Costa Rica. Yep. And then what about the reverse? What about, do you know how long?
Same.
Okay.
Same,
so if a UK citizen goes to America, they get 6 months tourist visa. Okay.
So we could technically just bounce back and forth on that and not even do it. But if she wants to get a job while she's over there, she'd have to have the green card, so to speak.
And so I'm just curious, would it be an option if your wife came to the UK, or I'm sorry, if your wife came to America, to US, and then you just popped across the border into Canada and came back into the US, would the US give them another 6 months tourist visa or not? Oh, okay. I was wondering about that.
When you scan that passport, it's all they know. Okay. They know where your every move is. Cell phones tell everybody where you are anyway, but credit card. But see,
this is the game that there's a ton of Americans or foreigners. There's a ton of foreigners in Costa Rica. This is what they have to do: is every 6 months they have to pop into Nicaragua or Panama or go back to their home country, and then and then they could just cross. There's literally an industry in Costa Rica where people drive people to like the Nicaragua border. They go across, they get their passport stamped, they come back into the country, and they get another 6 months. I know,
Yeah.
isn't that
No, I
ridiculous?
don't think.
And there's people that have lived in Costa Rica like that for 10 years. I'm not kidding, and they've never applied for residency. And it's just kind of like, why? Why do you want to play that game? Like, just get your residency going. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well,
but
we have a gal that we met through our church here in Luton, and her now husband is a Michigan State grad, now lives in Milwaukee. So she's doing that back and forth thing. So until she can get to move over there. She has 3 little kids, so that's a part of it too. They're her kids, not his kids. He was here in Luton, but his kids are older teenagers, so he decided he better go back and kind of be with them. So that's a different deal. But yeah, we're good friends with them. He was another American in Bushmead, so that kind of was and then we give each other a lot of grief about this.
Yeah.
the Minnesota and the Michigan State rivalry. So
So what's in the future for you? What are the plans?
Well, we do have the mortgage paid off on her house here in Luton. She is actively looking for a job she can work from anywhere in the world. Where she can open up her computer and do her job, and then me go do tourism, and then just flip back and forth. Again, like I said, our mothers are 88 and 90 years old. We don't know. It's until something happens with one or them, we don't know. We hate to leave here in case something happens to mom. And if something would happen with my mom, we'd hop on a plane as quick as we could and get home. You know what I mean? And so right now it's just kind of a juggling act. We got a lot of balls in the air trying to decide what we're going to do. And then, short term, we don't know. Long term, she doesn't want to experience a Minnesota winter. I have her sold on Minnesota, but I have not had her there in the winter. So
I feel her vibe for sure, especially after having lived in Costa Rica.
However, remember when I said it never goes below freezing and it's always wet? I will take a Minnesota winter over a London winter.
Really?
Because I'll take that really cold, but it's dry, sun is shining, you move the snow, you're good. And I do like the snowmobile. So
yeah.
I'm a farm boy. I grew up in the cold. It doesn't bother me. You dress for it.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
So
that's for sure. Well, we came back last Christmas and visited the family, and we had definitely gotten used to the Costa Rican heat, and we came back and we were just like, oh wow, it hit us hard, and then right around the New Year's, like there always tends to be this cold snap that comes just right at the beginning of January. Christmas is usually pretty comfortable, and then it just like makes a huge pivot and just completely goes into the frigid temps.
10,000 below zero Fahrenheit.
Yeah, exactly.
With a wind.
Yeah. Cool.
I always say that, you know what, I grew up on a livestock farm, and then as did you. You still got to make sure your animals are fed and watered, and the barns are clean. You're still starting tractors. You're out there dealing with it. I'm used to it. So be it. Let's go do it. But over here with the damp, and I'm going to be 60 in September. I got a knee that cannot take that wet. This winter, my knee hurt so bad I could hardly walk it.
So has your just kind of a side note to that, has your health improved or has your health changed at all since before and after your life transition?
I would say my health is better because this wife makes me eat better.
Yeah.
And exercise.
You get out of that. Well, I mean, no offense to the Midwest, but the Midwest tends to grow big people. and what does that is that it's your environment. You're around a lot of large large people. You're around a lot of farmer, eating
Hills.
habits. Yep, exactly. Minnesota meals and no, I could see that. So when you moved to the London area, I forget, was it Luton? Luton. When you moved to Luton, did you feel that like change within you? Like did it actually make you want to eat healthier? Or I suppose would it all come from your wife?
It didn't make me want to. It's my wife said, you will. You got to have something green. You got to have this. And so I'm I probably drink less alcohol now than I did before. So that helps. We go for a lot more walks than I ever did. That started when I was driving truck through COVID, that I had to get out of the truck and go for walks.
Yeah.
So,
and this is all kind of just kind of a byproduct of your new environment and your new life. Yeah. Okay.
So, and my stepson got married a week ago, and so I got asked to play the part of father of the groom, so I had a tuxedo to fit into too, and look good. So it was another.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing how old you are, Jay?
I'll be 60 in September.
You're going to be 60 in September.
Yes.
Well, you look fantastic. You're in your 50s.
Yeah,
holy cow!
59 years old. I'll be 60 on September 21st.
Jay, I thought you were way younger.
Nope.
And so so you made the switch from the dairy industry into tourism when you were how old?
54.
54. That's incredible. There's just no, and I love that. I love that because there's just no reason for anybody ever to say I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. Like you can always just change, and you can always just decide to do something different.
And I think at that age it was easier because my kids were grown.
Sure.
You know, my daughter was 20, my son would have been 24.
Yeah.
And now my son's married at 32. My daughter's got a partner at 28. And my son just 2 months ago had his first son, so I'm a grandpa now.
Wow.
So got
Congrats.
a little, and my name is Jay Kenneth. My son is Justin Kenneth. The baby is Joel Kenneth.
Okay.
So
that's really cool. Did the birth of the grandson kind of trigger anything inside of you in terms of like, like so many people hit a midlife crisis at some point in their life. Did you experience any feelings like that? Like when the grandson was born?
When the grandson was born, I'm going, I got to get home and meet him.
Yeah.
I haven't a chance to meet the baby yet. And that's what a lot of August is going to be that. So I tease my wife and call her grandma, and over here they don't like the term grandma. Grandmas have gray hair and a bun.
And so what do they use instead of grandma? Anything?
Nana, nanny, nan.
Okay.
My stepson, who's also named Jay, by the way, he calls both his grandmothers were nans, and granddad, not grandpa, granddad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What was the hardest part about getting used to the language there? Or was there ever a language barrier or anything like that?
There's a big time language barrier.
Okay. So it took you a while.
The accent is hard. It's hard to pick up the accent. My ears have gotten a lot better at that. Sometimes my wife says I'm deaf because I'll say, excuse me. And most of the time it's me processing what she said. She says it a second time, it confirms what I thought I heard. They don't say aluminum, it's aluminium. It's not oregano, it's oregano. And so there's just, let's see, a courgette is a zucchini. So it's just, there's different terms for different things.
And did that come pretty quickly, or how many months did it take you before you really felt comfortable with that? Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. What's the main one? Ham. It's not a ham, a boneless ham. It's a gammon.
It's a gammon. No, I'd never heard any of that.
When she said we're going to have gammon tonight, I go, what?
Sounds like it's something right out of Dr. Seuss.
Exactly. And you got different things like that. It's not a crosswalk, it's a crossing. Not a sidewalk, it's the pavement. Where we call the pavement is the highway. No, the pavement is the sidewalk. And so, it's just, there's just different little things. If I say horseback riding, where else are you going to ride the horse? It's horse riding. So it's...
That's a good point, I guess. They have a point on that one.
Yes. So, what I find that I love about it is stumbling across American history here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I find fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a place called the Hellfire Caves. Mm-hmm. And we're driving down to Windsor. We were not in the city when Queen Elizabeth died, and Tracy loved Queen Elizabeth. So we're going to go down to Windsor where she's buried and pay her last respects. This is from September to April. We're driving by this place called the Hellfire Cave, and she goes, I've always wanted to stop there. I drove by here, I don't know how many times. I've always wanted to stop. So we stopped.
Mm-hmm.
We went in, paid our money to go into the Hellfire Caves. The first thing I see is a life-size cardboard cutout of Benjamin Franklin. And I recognized him right away, and I said, Ben Franklin. Tracy goes, who's that? And I said, one of the guys that kicked you guys out of our country. I go on to learn that he was a member of the Hellfire Club in the 1750s and 60s and early 70s with members of Parliament trying to reconcile the differences with King George III and the colonies, because the British Empire was going to be centered in Philadelphia or New York because of all the resources they had in the world. Boston Tea Party happened. He got called into Parliament in London, got a 2-hour butt chewing, and he didn't get a word in edgewise. He walked out of there, threw up his hands, went to France, and started talking to Lafayette to say, all right, I'm done.
Wow.
That is the coolest thing ever when you stumble across that.
Yeah.
4 presidents have a statue in London. 4 U.S. presidents are statued in London.
Can you name them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
George Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the story behind that statue is George Washington rose to the rank of captain in the British Army during the French-Indian Wars and all that in the British Army. Mm-hmm. He could not rise above captain because he was born in the New World, not in England. He was so ticked off, he swore, I will never set foot on English soil ever again. They brought soil from Mount Vernon, Virginia to put underneath that statue so it would be truthful.
Wow.
In front of the Supreme Court building is Abraham Lincoln, because he's the fairest lawyer ever throughout history. So the British want every one of their lawyers, as they walk into the Supreme Court building, to look at Abraham Lincoln and be just as fair.
Very cool.
Who do you think the other 2 are?
Oh, Thomas Jefferson, maybe? I don't know.
Nope.
Not a clue. Yeah?
They're both relatively modern. They're both passed away.
I got nothing.
One's kind of obvious. Franklin Delano Roosevelt to World War II.
FDR, sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
He has a statue in Regent's Park, and he also has a memorial in Westminster Abbey.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan.
Interesting. What do they see in Ronald?
Good friends with Queen Elizabeth and good friends with Maggie Thatcher.
Wow.
And now, I never met my father-in-law, but my wife always says 2 strong women never get along. 2 women of power never get along. They agreed on policies, but they did not get along. The Queen and Maggie Thatcher. It's documented how those 2 did not see eye to eye. Public, in social environments. Reagan, I think, schmoozed them both. Reagan was a speaker. I see a lot of Reagan speeches, and I go, oh, man, he could speak. And I'm old enough that I remember Reagan as a president. I don't know if you're old enough to remember him as, and follow him and really know it. My dad and I, when we were milking cows, we talked a lot of politics. And so, yes. And Reagan could speak. He was charismatic. So he's got a statue in Regent's Park as well.
Cool.
So
Well, yeah, that hour went by in a hurry. That
It
went by
did. It
fast, and
did.
I really appreciate you sharing your story, Jay. Anything else you want to share with us before we
Um,
wrap up?
One thing I'd say, if anybody is looking at a transition in life, and they're,
Mm-hmm.
again, like you said earlier, age does not make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I had something, and I had a daughter that kind of pushed me this way, and
Mm-hmm.
she was 100% right. I needed a change. I needed it, and I am so happy now. I've never been happier. And even my
Yeah,
stepson at his wedding, he said in the speech how, seeing my mom as happy as she is, and Jay, you were a part of that.
yeah. Well,
So,
that's one of the things that fascinates me the most. Is sometimes it's so easy for other people to see something inside of us that we can't see inside of ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, why? That is just incredibly fascinating to me. Whereas it's like how many blind spots that we all walk around thinking and believing all the time, that we're completely missing. And so I really appreciate that comment about your daughter being able to see that you needed a change, that you were actually unhappy, and that's the other thing is so many people are just unwilling to be real with themselves, be truthful with themselves, that no, I'm not happy in this situation, and there I do actually want to change, but for some reason it's that stuckness, it's that unhappiness, that's where their comfort zone is. And
oh,
so, you know what I mean, they
yep.
don't necessarily have enough drive and enough initiative to break out of that comfort zone.
Well, either that or they're scared
Sure.
scared of the change. I see
Absolutely.
that in my son a lot. He was, even growing up, he hated change. We
Mm-hmm.
actually opened and enrolled him. He was going to Elgin Millville School. We opened and enrolled him to Plainview. 3 years later, the schools are together.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
he we just wanted to get that push, and he
Yeah.
was just furious. We switched him out of there. We actually moved houses, switched 4-H clubs. He was just fit to be tied. And on Father's
Mm-hmm.
Day, he called me and he says, "Now I got to figure out how to do that with my son." He said,
Mm-hmm.
"All the things." He said, "I went kicking and screaming into a lot of things, but I look back at it now, Dad. You did a lot of great things for me."
Yeah, for sure.
He had me in tears, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
and that's one of the most valuable things about like the moral program or any type of like leadership program that you can kind of take on, or maybe even if it's like the local speech group, where you're
mhm.
getting, I'm forgetting, like, maybe like the Rotary Club or whatever it is, like all of these things like are
Toastmasters.
Toastmasters. That's exactly what I
Yep.
was thinking of.
Yep.
All of these things are designed to get you through the discomfort, right? And like that's you have to, and Marl certainly did that with us, is it just forced us to be uncomfortable at times, and
Comfortable at being uncomfortable. I say
exactly,
that so often. You got to be
exactly,
comfortable being uncomfortable.
right. Oh, 100%.
Well,
uh
trying different foods. Olga's the one who
yeah,
pushed me to. I was a fussy eater. Now I say, okay, at least got to try it. But there's certain
yeah.
things. Yep, I've tried it. That's enough.
Well, you were the one that ate, didn't you eat spider or something at that
I
bus
ate a
stop?
tarantula.
There you
Yes,
go.
I
Okay.
did.
I couldn't eat a tarantula. And then were you one of the guys that ate the frog legs and had a little stomach issues, little stomach
No,
bug after? No? Okay.
no. You've.
Uh-huh.
This is what I equated when I walked by that table.
Yeah.
The smell hit me. And the first thing I thought of was, I grew up on a dairy farm. I've delivered more calves than the doctor who delivered my daughter had, or my
Mm.
son had delivered kids. He
Uh-huh.
told me that you've delivered more babies than I have.
Yeah.
You
Uh-huh.
get a cow that calves and doesn't clean for 3 days.
That's what it
That's
smells
the
like.
smell that I smelt at that table. I couldn't eat that night at all.
Wow, I suppose.
And
Oh, I stuffed myself silly, but I did not eat the frog legs. Uh-huh.
Matt, Matt
Yeah.
was in tough shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was my
Yeah.
roommate. He was in tough shape.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yep.
No, there
So
was, I don't know what it was somewhere around 50 to 60% of the group was knocked out for a couple days there. Yeah.
yes,
Oh, it
that is
was,
true. That is true about, like you said, 50 to 60 of the I always
yeah.
see to say half the group was down and
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And then we had to drive to Angkor Wat the next day.
Yeah. Oh,
That
yeah.
was
No,
a trip of a lifetime. Jake.
it was. It really
was.
was. Yeah. No, the whole program though, I loved the program. It was so well done. It was so well put together, and
Yes.
like I love its mission too, and just the impact that it has to be having in the world is got to be, it's indescribable, or it's unmeasurable, because you just don't know what little seeds that program planted in people's minds, or what, even like just getting certain people to think of themselves as being a leader is difficult, right? And so many people just kind of put themselves in this little box that, you gotta kind of encourage people to think differently and think bigger, and get out of that little box.
I think that helped my tourism
Yeah, I believe
tremendous.
it. Without a doubt. Yeah.
The reading, the whole. I always I'm out of the box extrovert. Okay, let's see. Me and Caroline were the farthest ones up that scale.
That's funny, Jay, because when I did that, I was on the opposite end of the spectrum. I was like all the way on the 30 of the yep. But you're talking about the Myers-Briggs, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I look at the next month when we did the personality.
Mm-hmm.
Rod and we have absolutely no empathy whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think I've gotten better at that as well. And it's just the personality tests and the emotionals. Those two were the biggest part, and they were the first two classes we had.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and it's always so unbelievable to me, just how little we know, and like how I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and that is one of my favorite quotes ever. Is just like, you can't, there's this book that I bring up all the time, but it's the Daniel Kahneman Thinking Fast and Slow, and the book talks a lot about just how blind we are to the obvious all the time, and like there's just stuff, there's information coming directly into us, and we're filtering it through our screen, and how much stuff just gets tossed off by the wayside, and it's always just so fascinating to me to think that, like, we're missing so much. We're missing so much in our awareness, in our understanding, and so, like, that's the one belief that I just love carrying around, is just like, know that you don't know everything. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I've gotten so much better that I probably know a fair share of stuff, but I don't know it all.
Right.
I might let you think I know it all.
Uh-huh.
So yes, but it's and I'm constantly learning London, and the biggest thing when I got Americans on tour, I say, you guys think a 200-year-old building is the coolest thing ever. They got to have 1,000 years old before they get any credibility here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I've also led tour groups in Rome. There, the building's got to be 2,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went from Rome to Greece. They got to be 3,000 years old to get credibility in Greece.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
cool.
just,
yeah.
I can't imagine Egypt.
Right. Yeah.
So that's on my bucket list, Egypt and Jerusalem, but I don't think I want to go to either of those places right now.
Right.
Ultimate goal, Jacob, is all 50 states and all 7 continents.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing.
I got 4 continents down and 43 states, so I'm getting close.
Cool. Super cool. So, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope other people who hear this story, who may be thinking about making a life transition, can understand that anybody can do it, and at any age, and they're really, the only thing that's stopping you is your own thoughts and your own self.
That's right. That is correct.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you, Jay, if they want to book a tour with you or anything along those? Yeah.
I'm at, you can follow me on Facebook at Journeys by Jay. That's my company, Journeys by Jay LLC. Facebook gets a lot more action than my website does. We don't do a lot with the website. So either that or email me at j@journeys by J. That's plural, Journeys by J, because I do multiple journeys. So, yep, journeysbyj.com, j@journeysbyj.com. So that's, and then, like I said, Facebook, we do have a YouTube channel and Instagram. And my wife is my promotion. She's my VP of marketing. So she takes care of both of those for us.
So, but the Facebook platform is probably where you're the most active?
That's where we actually put quite a bit up there. When I'm on tour, I'll send her back pictures, and then she'll put together a Facebook post. And I'm working right now on a Journeys by J trip of Route 66 next May. And it's the 100th anniversary of Route 66 next year. It opened in 1926, and that's going to coincide with the United States is 250 years old next year. So next year is going to be a busy year in the U.S. So
yeah. Well, I think you're positioned extremely well, Jay, to blow up your business, to blow up your tourism, and so many people realized how miserable it is to sit around in your house for a year when we went through COVID like that, and like people are just ready to get out and see the world, and also I just think more and more people are going to realize that that they're going to regret not having traveled more and not having seen more of the world, I think.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, get out there when you can. I mean, I'm 60, and a lot of my guests that I bring from Britain over are pensioners or retired. Some of them have mobility issues. You can't go to the national parks if you got mobility issues. I mean, you can get around, but you're not going to see what you can when you're in your 50s and 60s. My biggest thing is do it now.
And that's exactly where my parents are at right now. My parents are 76 and 78 years old, and they still get around pretty well for their age, and they are doing everything they can to get out and see the world. They came and visited us in Costa Rica. They spent 2 weeks, I believe, in Costa Rica. And we did all kinds of hiking. We saw all kinds of rainforest and the beach and volcanoes and that's what they just keep seeing where's next? You just got to keep booking the next trip and
Well, I got a tour with Titan out of London here in October, Boston and New England in the fall. My wife has booked on the travel on that tour with me. So,
we lost internet connection.
Hello?
Jay. Shoot.
Can you hear me? Hello? Think I lost you. Are you still there? Must have timed out or something. I don't know. Where are we? Hello, Jake. Hello. You sitting back?
There we go. All right, we had a little internet glitch. No worries. But yeah.
So she's going to travel with me to Boston and New England, and we got a 12-day trip through New England. And then once we send the British back to London, her and I are going to rent a camper van, and she wants to see Niagara Falls. And I said, that's a 7-hour drive. She goes, that's a lot closer than we are right now. So we're going to drive across New York State to Niagara Falls just to try to camper for 3 days and see how it goes. And then next summer, we're looking at maybe southern Utah, Monument Valley, Grand Canyon. Southern Utah is amazing with the national parks right across that southern border of Utah. So, have you ever been?
No, I've been to the Grand Canyon, but not.
But you got Zion National Park, you got Arches National Park, you got Capitol Reef, you got Bryce Canyon, all of them right across the southern border of Utah.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And I've led tours through there, basically from Moab to Vegas, and you pick up another group and go backwards. Monument Valley is in northern Arizona. That's where John Wayne and John Ford made a lot of movies. Went through the town where the outlaw Josie Wales was filmed, and so we watched that movie on the coach on a long haul through some of that more desolate area. So, yep.
Very cool.
Yep, pretty cool. U.S. has a lot to show.
They do. It's a huge country.
Huge. And Europe has a lot to show too.
Yeah, I believe it. Cool.
Planning a trip in 2030 to Oberammergau, Germany for the Passion Play. My kids and I and our spouses, we went and saw that in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So that's every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of the Passion Play in Oberammergau, Germany?
Mm-mm.
In 1633, the little small community of Oberammergau, just south of Munich, was threatened with the bubonic plague.
Mm-hmm.
They prayed to God and said, "You save our city, we will honor you to the end of time."
Mm-hmm.
They started the first Passion Play in Oberammergau in 1634. It now runs every 10 years. They've missed 3.
Okay.
1820, the Spanish flu. 40 to the World War II. And they moved 2020 due to the COVID, moved that back to 2022.
Okay. Wow.
It's a city of 5,000 people.
Uh-huh.
Anybody who auditions gets a part. The oldest cast member I saw was 90-something. The youngest was 6 months.
Uh-huh.
You have to be born in Oberammergau or lived there for 20 years to be a part of the show.
Okay. And the entire play is to praise the city.
It's to praise God. The Passion Play is the Passion of the Christ. It's Palm Sunday to Resurrection. If you're a Christian, you know that story.
Sure.
And so the first act is Jesus coming into town on the donkey on Palm Sunday to where he gets arrested. Then you got a 3-hour intermission to go back to your hotel and eat dinner and whatever. You come back that night. The trial, crucifixion, and resurrection is the second act.
How big of the audience? Or I mean, how many people can attend?
The show, theater holds somewhere between 45 and 5,000 people. 4,500 and 5,000.
Okay, and so do you have to how far in advance do you have to buy tickets? Yeah,
I had my tickets 2 years in advance for 2020.
Okay,
that's why I'm planning at starting to put it together now. Because and then they start the shows in end of May. They go 4 shows a week through the beginning of October.
Okay.
They sell out 2 years in advance.
Holy cow! Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really something.
And when I said everybody who shows up for an audition gets a part, whether you're in the chorus, whether you have a main character part, whether you're in the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Right when they arrest Jesus, and that's in the temple, there's 1,600 people on stage at that one point.
Oh my goodness.
And live animals.
Oh my goodness.
The Romans are riding on horseback. They got sheep, they got doves, they got, it's the marketplace. And the orchestra is down under the stage, so that's part of the 1,600 in the orchestra. They have little flashbacks to the Old Testament that foretells what's going to happen to Jesus, and that's what's coming. Everything is in German, but they give you the full play in your native language, Spanish, English, whatever your language is, so you can follow along.
Okay.
What I found the most interesting, and I had perfect attendance through Sunday school for 8 years, so I knew the story like the back of my hand, is in the trial, who was fighting for and who was fighting against Jesus. That's what I thought was very interesting. You know what I mean? And it was so realistic. I mean, they put the crown of thorns on Jesus' head. He was bleeding down his face instantly. They cracked a whip, and Jesus is laying on the right facing you, and they're whipping him from behind. It looked and sounded real. I mean, we were in the 7th row, so we were right there.
Wow. Oh, very cool. Super cool.
There's a trip for you and your wife in 2030.
Well, I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, Jay, of so many different, tourist locations and all kinds of interesting stuff to tell and interesting stories
It's like I said, it's the statistics and the actual dates and stuff. You're not going to remember those. You're going to remember the cool little stories.
Right.
And that to me is my job. Root those out and tell those little stories. So
No, very cool. I'm super happy for you and your
Mm-hmm.
new life. I mean, it's almost like a second life that you're experiencing,
It is.
I think you're just one of the most genuine and authentic people,
Well,
and
thank you.
there's no, yeah, I mean, there's just no question in my mind that you get bigger tips than all your other coworkers, and I can tell exactly why people just love love giving you big tips and enjoy your tours, and you've got a voice that can project about 50 feet with no microphone, and easily reach the elderly person in the back of the bus.
That's what
Right.
the microphone is for. But my wife did tell me when she was on Route 66 that, oh, Jay doesn't need a microphone at the Grand Canyon. We could
It's
hear
so
him all
true.
the way across.
Yeah. But all right. Well, it's Journeys by Jay on Facebook or journeysbyjay.com,
Mm-hmm.
that's where people can find you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining the podcast, Jay, and sharing your
All
story.
right. Yep. Thanks, Jacob. And you have a great time as well.
Yeah, you too.
Hey, I hope you got some value out of listening to the podcast. If you'd like to find out more about us and our mission, check out brilliantlifejourney.com.